The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Reproduction or dissemination, other than for the purpose of education or information without the express written permission of the Phoenix Research Institute or Nova Society Media, is strictly prohibited.
Welcome back to the Nova Society. I'm your host, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, and I'm here with my panel, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Mark Bount. Today, we will be answering many of our listener emails, and we have created a list that reflects the top topics from the past week. Again, we're going to look at Signalgate. Who should be fired or resign? Do we think any laws were broken? And if so, will there be accountability? Oh yeah, people should be fired, people should resign. There's a good question about laws. Mark, you probably know, probably some, I would think. I don't know if there'll be any accountability. At the moment, it looks like Mike Waltz is going to be blamed for this. He might be fired, but they all should go, in my opinion. Hegseth, Gabbard, Waltz, the whole bunch should go, and along with Trump. But that's not going to happen. Potentially the Espionage Act was broken. I'm not sure what other laws may have been broken. I'm not that conversant with the law. Certainly the expectations for how top officials communicate with one another. Is that a law? How we were last time, Mark and Scott, we were talking about how all this money, hundreds of billions, tens of billions, the federal government has spent on making sure communications are secure. Is that a law that top officials use those? And if so, then of course that law was broken. So I doubt there'll be accountability. So please, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, we saw with the Hillary Clinton email and server at home scandal that cost her probably the presidency, that she didn't violate any laws. She violated rules. Like, the State Department had rules that she violated. I would say that the big difference there is that Hillary Clinton's husband was the president of the United States previously, and he has, along with a security staff and an IT staff, he has clearances. She gets the benefit of that when she's in Chappaqua at their home. And I don't think anybody ever discussed enough how much of what she was using was set up for former President Clinton as part of the perks of being an ex-president, and not just something that she did on her own for subterfuge purposes while she used her cell phone and a private server at home to communicate mostly about children's parties and things like that, personal get-togethers. I will point out that when the blind dissident was rescued from China, Hillary Clinton was on a secure satellite phone that had full security on it, and was not tappable by the Chinese, to make sure that she was getting play-by-play information as they were spiriting this guy. I don't think he had to walk 6 miles. He's blind. He had to walk 6 miles or something like that to meet his handlers who were spiriting him out of the country. And so Hillary Clinton, when she was doing her job, did it properly. And, this is obviously the complete opposite of that. I mean, these guys don't seem to have any separation between what they're doing personally and what their jobs are. And that's real unfortunate. I'll say that Mike Waltz is probably the one on the hot seat the most at the moment. And there was a reporter today who wrote an article about when he was in Congress, and when he was trying to get to the White House, he went on a campaign to sort of a to talk to as many reporters as he possibly could to make himself look good so that he would be hireable for this position that he's in now. And that's why he had all these reporters' phone numbers on his cell phone. And that's probably why Jeffrey Goldberg ended up in this call. So, his hung up by his own ambition. Ooh, we've seen this before. I think it's the plot of Macbeth, if I'm not mistaken. And it is, he is certainly on the hot seat. I think Hegseth should be as well. Obviously, Hegseth is and always has been incompetent and just not qualified for this job. It is just way over his head. I don't, So what more do you want to say about that? You could also point out, I guess, that Tulsi Gabbard, who's been in a cult most of her life, is a huge fan of Vladimir Putin, and has, as recently as months ago, I think it was actually in March, maybe even so this month still, retweeted pro-Putin Malaysian blogger who was praising Putin for something that he was doing, and Tulsi Gabbard amplified that to her probably now fairly vast audience, and claimed, when she was asked about it at the hearing the other day, that this was done on her own phone from her own X account and has nothing to do with her job, which is like as absurd a statement as there is.
Yeah. All right. So should there be people fired or resigned? Easy answer there, yes, every single one of them, except the guy from the Atlantic. He can keep his job. Any laws being broken? Probably the Espionage Act. That would probably be the big one. There's probably a bunch of regulations that were also broken, as opposed to laws. As Scott points out, when we're talking about Hillary Clinton's incident, yes, I believe that what she did was wrong. There's no doubt about it. But as Scott points out as well, she was married to the the former president of the United States. There was an infrastructure there that existed because of Bill Clinton that would probably not be applicable to any of the people that we're talking about here. So, yes, laws. Will there be accountability? Absolutely not, because that would mean that the fox who was watching the hen house would have to tell on the fox. So that's just not going to happen. And if you listen to the response by many of the Republicans just in the Congress and the talking heads on the propaganda networks of Fox and Newsmax and OAN, no, they're going to downplay this. Jesse Waters, well, I've texted the wrong person before. Okay, Jesse, nobody gives a damn. Did you tell anybody state secrets? Did you put out war plans? Oh, well, these weren't war plans. Okay, well, what exactly would you call them? What, you playing a game of Risk or something that, and this was just a chat about that. So, yeah, there's a lot there. And the issue is going to be is you're asking the administration to police itself, and they can't tie their own shoes. So the question really comes down to it is what is going to happen? How would we survive until we get a different administration in? Because I can't see any of this changing. If nobody's going to be accountable, why would anybody change anything that they're doing? And as we said, last time, this probably is not the first time this has happened. This has probably happened before. We just don't know about it. And the only reason we know about it this time was because they were Keystone Coppish about it and accidentally invited in the wrong person. But it's, again, that level of incompetence and the really competent thing. And there's been some Republicans on that said, hey, you know what? Own it. Just own it. Admit, well, we made a mistake. We're going to learn from this mistake. And somebody was on the television the other day and made a great point when they said, in fact, it was S.E. Cupp. S.E. Cupp was on CNN, and of course, she was always a very staunch Republican. When there was counterpoint, she was the Republican representative, the journalist for that. And she said, you know what? This is not an apprenticeship. This is not a place for on-the-job training. You come in here, you better know what the hell you're doing. And I think that was an excellent point that she made. I don't agree with her on a lot of things, but I'll tell you, yeah, this should never have happened. There should be accountability. And unfortunately, the way the rules are set up, somebody cannot just, come out and, say, Supreme Court, take a look at this. Can't do it. So there's a process there, and by the time the process would get over and done with, we'd be so far past it wouldn't even be funny. So, yeah, that would be, I think, the answer to all that is pretty simple. I understand the question. I understand why the question is being asked. They probably just want confirmation of what they're already thinking, and I can say that the emails that we got basically said there would be no accountability. So, yes, I think we can all agree that accountability is not going to be there.
Right.
No, go ahead, Scott.
Richard Nixon was president when Watergate was being investigated. And, at a certain point, yes, Congress took over. But I'm sure that the Justice Department was involved in investigating what was going on with Watergate. Every president has to somehow separate himself or herself, hopefully someday, from the Department of Justice and allow justice to be done. Flawed as it may be, Biden kept the Durham investigation going until it burned out on its own and found very little wrong with Crossfire Hurricane. Only a couple of minor indictments came out of that, and nothing major at all. He allowed the special counsel who was investigating Hunter Biden, his own son, to continue doing that. He allowed a special counsel to be appointed to investigate his own handling of documents, and so we've seen some continuity through the years of separation between the Department of Justice and the Oval Office. But now we don't have that anymore. Now Pam Bondi gets up and just goes, you should just be happy that the mission was a success, as if no mission has ever been a success before. And there's nothing to investigate here. Well, that's complete bullshit. And she should be ashamed of herself. But again, she is incompetent as well. She is, however, qualified. At least on the surface, she was an attorney general of a state, albeit Florida. But she was an attorney general, so she should know better. And again, this is authoritarianism. This is a one man calling all the shots for everybody, and it's not going to end well.
Yeah, no, and to your point, Mark, with S.E. Cupp, there was, it might have been Nancy Mace, I'm not sure. It was a Republican woman, and her name wasn't given, but she was saying, and I'm honestly not sure which program I saw this on. It might have been Democracy Now! It might have been LBC, saying, well, he meaning Pete Hegseth, is entitled to make mistakes. He can make mistakes, but we have to see the good he'll do later on, or some words to that effect. And I'm thinking, oh my God. Assuming that he does good later on is irrelevant if he's going to make mistakes of such magnitude that American men and women who are serving their country get killed. As this job is not an apprenticeship, as you said, Mark, as S.E. Cupp pointed out, and this man is not, Pete Hegseth is not competent. And that brings me back to what he said, Hegseth said during the time when it wasn't clear if his nomination was going to go through, that he didn't see why his I think it was he and not Matt Gaetz who said that he didn't see why his nomination should not go forward. And I thought, really, man, you can't see why your nomination should not go forward. You're not qualified is why your nomination should not go forward. That's why you should not be taking the job. Hello. So obviously he's too stupid to know how stupid he actually is. It's
well,
just,
in Brooklyn, it's not a matter of stupid. It's a matter of it's Dunning-Kruger, thinking you know more than you actually do.
Yes.
One of the questions that a couple of listeners asked that I did not put into this was, what would have been the correlation if this was the Cuban Missile Crisis? If this group were handling the Cuban Missile Crisis and not the group that was handling it.
Oh, brother.
And that's maybe how we should start measuring the quality of the people. Would these guys be able to handle something as important as the Cuban Missile Crisis? And I think we just showed absolutely not.
Oh, absolutely not. No.
What are you laughing at, Scott?
I was just thinking about it. We could go beyond that. This is Eisenhower and George Marshall telling Hitler where we're going to strike in Normandy, when we invade Europe, right? Exactly where we're going in Normandy, and we'll be there on such and such a day at such and such a time. Yeah. How would that have turned out?
Yeah. I mean, and I thought it was a very good point and it was made by a few of our listeners, and they made the correlation. They said, we're looking at this and we're saying, my God, if this was the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yes.
And these clowns were in charge, what would have been the end result? Of course, we'll never know. But when you play it back, when you do that alternate reality kind of playback kind of thing, if it doesn't worry, I don't know what would. Probably Miami wouldn't be there still.
Well, so could I float this one?
Absolutely.
To you? Because there are two things that I am absolutely positively certain about that I can never prove. And one of them is that had Al Gore been the president, 9/11 never would have happened. And the second one is if Hillary Clinton had been president, COVID never would have gotten as bad as it did. Those are two things that I believe that I could never prove. They're obviously counterfactuals. This didn't happen, but these were defensible crises that were so poorly handled, right? W in the summer leading up to 9/11 was completely negligent, had no intention of taking seriously the threats that he was receiving, even when he discovered that in Florida there were there were people learning how to fly but not learning how to land the planes, and that there was another memo that said Obama determined to strike at the U.S. with using airplanes as tactical weapons. Never put it all together, which is why we're stuck with Homeland Security, which is the worst agency ever. And by the same token, that Hillary Clinton understood the threat, having lived through the swine flu in 2009 with Obama, understood that there was a serious threat of epidemic becoming a pandemic, and that you needed to have people in place to prevent this, even if it meant that they were mostly sitting around doing nothing most of the time. But she would have kept that going, whereas Trump and John Bolton got rid of the White House crew, got rid of the team that was CDC based in Wuhan, China, and other places around the world, presumably to save money, but what we got out of it was a pandemic.
And they haven't learned anything, because look at what's happening with HHS and USAID, and there's a disease,
measles,
or virus or something in Congo. I'm not sure if it's in the Democratic Republic of Congo that is spreading. a couple of children ate a bat carcass, and this is where it started. It's a hemorrhagic fever that
Okay.
is something like malaria, but it's not malaria, and it's not Ebola, and it's not Marburg, and no one knows what it is. And we would normally have our scientists and doctors on the ground figuring out what it is, and this is spreading quickly. I don't know how many people have died or how many people have it, but we're not there. I don't even know if this thing has got a name at this point. And Mark, I do want to say though that I disagree. I don't think that Pete Hegseth is intelligent enough to know that he's not intelligent. And I do agree with you about Dunning-Kruger. This is the Dunning-Kruger presidency and the kakistocracy. But I've run across other people who are so unintelligent that they don't understand how unintelligent they are, or that other people can be more intelligent than they. A mark of an intelligent person is to understand that how little the person knows, and that others also can be much, much smarter.
So, by the way, it is the Republic of Congo,
It is.
and it is in fact malaria.
Is it malaria?
That has made 943 people sick and 52 dead, with symptoms ranging from fever and fatigue to vomiting and weight loss. So I just read that in the SABC News, whatever that is. So yes,
do not
you are
eat
correct.
a bat.
Do not eat bats. I don't know if there's
No,
bats
no,
or bad
bats on the menu.
or bad water or roosters.
Had Musk and Trump not stopped U.S. aid, I mean, was that a direct result of the fact that these children had nothing else to eat? The fact that they were eating that bat carcass? I mean, it occurred to me that there might be a connection. And I do have a question about Bonnie. I know that she was twice the Attorney General of Florida, which to me doesn't say anything about her. And she was one of Trump's January 6th defendant lawyers or something, and she gave a very poor performance there. Is it possible for someone to refer her to the bar over her performance or non-performance as AG, and her not doing any investigation of the crimes of these individuals? Or is there no one who can do anything?
Yeah, I'm sure that that could happen. I'm not sure what the outcome would be, or how much the Bar Association would want to be involved in something like that. But yeah, I mean, I don't see any reason why they couldn't do that. By the way, while we were talking, I just saw this, that Trump pardoned Trevor Milton, who was guilty of some kind of fraud, defrauding investors, and who contributed $1.6 million to the Trump campaign. So I don't know if you can draw a quid pro quo from there, but I also don't know how you couldn't. So there you go. I mean, it's just, again, it's just one, you pile brick on brick on brick here, and what you're beginning to, or should see, is that there's corruption, that there's a very, very serious double standard between what this administration can get away with and what ordinary Americans can't get away with. And it's a troubling trend and very disturbing. And, any of us can be whisked away to a prison in El Salvador, have to watch Krista Noem pose in front of us and preen in front of cameras while we're sitting there going, I do not belong in this prison with these people. But there's nobody to talk to about that. And no ACLU lawyers are getting to that prison. And it's just, it's something that we can't allow to continue to happen. And hopefully at some point the military realizes that this is a bad situation, and they frog march Trump and the rest of them out of the White House and replace them with some kind of interim government until we can have a real election and vote for a real president, because this is intolerable. And
while the El Salvadorian prison there does not take women, at some point I think that there will be a separate but equal place for women. I've heard people when now that Moore and Marco Rubio is saying, well, that these lunatics, now he's calling them lunatics, from whom he is removing green cards, doctoral students who don't seem to me to have committed any crime, or they've been doing nothing but minding their own business and going to school. These somehow now are lunatics. I don't see that there's anything preventing this regime from removing citizenship from people who were born here. Is that what you were referring to, Scott, when you said any of us?
Yeah, any of us. Look at the look this week. A Tufts University graduate student whose name I'm not going to actually try to pronounce. It's Ozturk, I guess, who was in the United States legally on an F1 visa until it was revoked, had written an op-ed in the Tufts Daily calling on the school to divest its endowment from Israel due to killing of Palestinians. I am not on the side of this woman at all, okay? But I certainly support her right to write op-eds, very in Tufts newspaper. But Marco Rubio says, "Hey, we're going to do this. We're going to do this every day, and we're going to take away their visas, and we're going to kick them out of the country or throw them in prison. Wherever it is that they decide is going to be best. This is insanity."
Yeah, and he's calling her a lunatic.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy.
That reminds me. I have another question for you, Scott, and for Mark as well. Sorry, I know I cut you off. I don't want to forget my question. Remember when Mahmoud Khalil was arrested? It seems like forever ago, but it wasn't that long ago. A number of Jewish people, and I don't know if they were students. I'm not sure. They ran up and down Trump's golden staircase in Trump Tower, protesting the arrest and disappearance of Mahmoud Khalil. They were arrested. I don't know anything more about what happened to them. But they were Jewish people. I don't know where they went. I don't know what happened to them. I haven't heard anything more about them. Do you know? And so the people who were running up and down the staircase, the Jewish people, who were protesting Mahmoud Khalil's arrest and disappearance, do you know what happened to them? Because I haven't heard anything more about them or where they went or anything like that. They seem to have disappeared from the news and disappeared from everywhere else too.
So I think what you're talking about is the hundreds of people who were in Trump Tower protesting. Yes, they flooded Trump Tower.
Yes, yeah,
and
correct. That's correct.
Yeah, they were arrested. Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't think there's been news since that happened 2 weeks ago about them. So I don't know where they are.
Well, okay, I think we answered that one, and then some.
Yeah, so I want to thank everyone for listening to us on the Nova Society, and do keep your emails and your comments and questions coming. We are right here, and we will stay here with you. And
so we're arrested and detained, unless you have any questions about the Mets.
Yep.
That seems to be a safe topic that we can talk about, although
yes,
a little painful after yesterday.
After last night,
and by the way, painful today because they're on Apple TV and not SNY, which is crazy. It's almost impossible. You got to hunt around to try to find sporting events these days. You never know where they're going to pop up.
The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing partners, Apple iTunes, the largest source of podcasts and music on the internet, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your source for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. We'd also like to thank all of our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a question or a comment, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So for Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Priscilla Hobbs, Dr. Scott Gershwer, and all of us here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power in society is knowledge. Thanks for listening, and we will see you again next time. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, the Journal of Interdisciplinary Complex Science. The JCIS is an open journal for upcoming scholars. The JCIS is currently accepting article submissions on an ongoing basis. JCIS is a publication of NovaWorks, a scholarly repository at Nova Southeastern University. A link to the journal is in our description.